or I'd been out at a dinner and then I'd gone Christmas shopping. I came home and 30 minutes later I got a knock at the door and it was Sheriff Penzone from Maricopa County, two of my chiefs and two guys from Gilbert PD. And one of my chiefs has known my kids since they were little kids.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me and he said, Cooper and the baby are dead. In the blink of an eye, I lost my 22-year-old son, lost my 11-month-old granddaughter, and a few days later my daughter-in-law died. Guy was DUI, alcohol and drugs, and hit and killed him. And what it reminds you though is you realize there is no guarantee for tomorrow, and the only thing we take with us in this life is what we do. Honestly, it's kind of designed to see if you're going to get back up and you're going to continue to push forward and you're going to stay on the course. And when you get knocked down, you got to get back up, and sometimes you got to bite down on your mouthpiece and just start throwing blows back. And that's what we do in our family, and we try to teach that to our other kids as well.
Welcome to Flying High with Cam.
Yeah-yo.
A podcast where I combine two things I love.
This is insane.
Interviewing the most successful people I know
You're the baddest guy in town.
while flying helicopters.
Engine failure.
Fly with me. I want to hear your stories, learn from your experiences, and build a community. This is Flying High with Cam.
Welcome to Flying High with Cam. I'm so excited today. I got the big bad sheriff with me, man.
Oh, man.
What's
This
up?
is exciting, man. Thank you for letting me do this.
This is the first time we've met, and I feel like I've known you forever just because you're such a high, energetic guy. And Peter introduced us. He's like, dude, he's one of us. You're going to love him. So appreciate you coming up, man.
Thank you, man. And I appreciate it. And I love following what you're doing as well. I know we talked a little bit before we got on the plane. Not much. So we didn't ruin it for anybody. But I love what you've done with the pest control and all that stuff. So.
Well, before all the podcasts, I try and read as much as I can about the person that I'm interviewing. And I mean, you've done a lot of cool stuff
Don't
in
believe
your
everything,
life.
though.
No. Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm like, you've done a lot of cool stuff. But the thing that I think is the coolest is you owned a pest control company, man. So talk to me about that. So you owned a pest control company before you started into law enforcement.
So my dad was a graduate of Thunderbird School of Global Management. So we grew up, I grew up on the Big Island in Hawaii in Hilo.
Okay.
And then when I was 11, we moved to the Philippines. And then we moved back here to Arizona. My dad was from Chandler. So then I went to junior high and high school in Chandler.
Okay.
But then we moved to Panama when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So then spent a lot of time in Panama. And then I went on my mission to Argentina. I came back home and I just went right into business. And one of the things that I did was I sold pest control. I sold pest control.
What year is this?
This is 1998. I sold pest control. And I kind of got hooked on it. And so,
hey, man, someone's got to do it.
I know. So then when I go later on in life, I had a pigeon control business, did some pest control. Well, then one day I go on a ride along, and I had never thought about being a cop. And so I go on this ride along, and it was on the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community where we just flew over.
Yeah.
It was a graveyard shift, and I had this call where this dad had found a 20-year-old with his 14-year-old daughter. So they get into a fight. Guy runs out the back. So we show up, and I'm out there armed with a flashlight and courage. That's it. I got no vest, no gun, no nothing. So we go out, and we're out looking for this dude. And you know how the res is. There's a house, and there's nothing behind it.
Right.
Maybe an old abandoned travel trailer. So we're out there looking for this guy, and I look in this old abandoned travel trailer, and I see amongst all this trash and clothes and debris what I think is a quarter size of skin. And so I'm like, hey, I think this guy's in here. So They go in there, move all the stuff. Sure enough, he's there. They grab him, they pull him out, they rough him up, tase him, put him in cuffs. I went home that morning and woke my wife up and said, hey, I'm going to be a cop. So the reason I'm telling you that is because then I decided, you know what? I'm sick and tired of the direction of this country.
Yeah.
And I thought that law enforcement needed stronger leadership, especially with the direction we were going.
Yeah.
So, which by the way, this is freaking awesome, by the way.
You guys get this when you're coming to Huey's?
We do.
Okay,
we do over
cool.
the desert, but not like this. This is awesome. So
that's 2000.
So I got into law enforcement in 2006.
Okay.
In 2015, I decided to run for sheriff. Well, 2011, I decided to do it. It took me 4 years to get to that point. Part of that the way I had to do it is I had to start a pest control company. That's my long way of telling you. I got back into pest control, started with something called the Bug Police. We did pest control, bees.
Well, yeah, they're still in business, aren't they, the Bug Police?
Yeah, I sold it to somebody, and then they sold it to somebody. Okay. So we have been, that's how I ended up back in it. And it was great because it kind of funded this next step for me getting into back in as a sheriff. And so I attribute my pest control and that and sales and marketing getting me back into the sheriff's office.
I love it, man. And just for fun, because we don't want to make this a pest control podcast, but how much were you making per contract back in 1997?
Oh, at the peak when I had sold, and I was the leading sales guy that year for the summer. And at the top, we were at 150, 160 a sell.
That's so awesome.
I think I started at $60 or $70 a sell. I would have made a grip of money if I'd have been doing it now. But back then, I think I made about $35,000 or 40 grand in the summer.
Which is crazy because now reps are, and I told you reps are making around $700 to $800 a contract.
Yeah, that's crazy. I might get back into pest control.
Hey, man, so
screw the Senate.
Come knock doors for me, dude. Hey, listen, I'll pay you $200, okay?
Yeah.
$240, it's double what you were making.
Right.
No, I'm just playing.
Well, man, I would love it.
Okay, so you go from pest control to this ride along, which I'm surprised they even let you out of the car to go chase this guy. Like, that's crazy,
I'm surprised too, but I'm glad they did because that's what changed my life. You know, I knew I needed to do something more. I'm all about it. I think you are too. I'm all about pushing yourself to do more and more. That's what this life is about.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those guys that I just go. If I see something open, I go. And I saw, you know, an opportunity. I knew I needed to be doing more, and so I took that opportunity and decided to get in more deeper involved in this law enforcement thing, and I found my calling. And but I still love business. I mean, so I'm kind of in this. I always have some little business thing going on.
Okay, I love it, man. Talk to me about what it's like to be sheriff, man. I saw some, like, you've had quite a few, what are they called, restraining orders on people for like harassing you and all this stuff. Like, are you constantly getting death threats? Are you like What's it like to be sheriff? What's it like for your kids to be sheriff?
You know, my kids are good. We used to do live PD, and when you do things on TV, first of all, when you become the sheriff, everybody immediately thinks you're rich, which you're not. And then you're in the public eye. And then I'm a marketing guy. I'm a business guy. So we took those same concepts and we put it into practice at the sheriff's office. So we did live PD. Yeah. We did 60 days in. We started really building our social media. By the way, we are, for Facebook followers in the country, the number one for law enforcement. Number one is the FBI. Number two was the NYPD until about 2 months ago when the Pinal County Sheriff's Office passed them up. Dang. And so when you do those things, you put yourself in the public eye. And I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of crazy people out there, and they are drawn to people who are succeeding. Yeah. And I've been the victim of that. You know, where I don't call myself a victim. I've had people that gal that we ended up charging for death threats, I would have never have done that. But she was harassing these regular cops. Yeah. And she was making death threats on their families, and they were miserable. And I had the opportunity to charge her, and we did. And honestly, she was probably capable of doing something. Jeez, you don't want to take the chance. And her dad even called me and was like, "Hey, thank you for doing that, because we slept with one eye open. We carried a gun with us from the bedroom to the bathroom because of how with all the threats." So you get crazy people, but you also get to meet so many amazing people, and it's really opened a lot of doors. You know, I was a co-host I would fly back to New York every week to co-host a show in New York called Live PD Wanted, which was a mixture of Live PD meets America's Most Wanted type show.
So we were introduced through Peter, who was an inmate in one of your prisons.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Peter. Talk to me about the prisons here. He was sharing some facts with me that just blew my mind about the Florence prison out there.
Yeah, luckily I run the jail, but we deal with the prisons as well. I don't run them, thank goodness. But Peter, I met Peter through, somebody connected us. And I just immediately, I liked Peter. I actually really like guys that have spent time. I've got some really good friends that have spent time in prison. Yeah. And I think they just are real people. They're honest. They don't screw around. They'll tell you what their intentions are.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And Peter was one of those guys. And I saw Peter as a guy who he wasn't crying about his past. He wasn't crying about the time he spent in prison. This guy took his opportunities and he moved forward and was making him a success out of life. And I've tried to do everything I can to support people like that.
That's cool.
I think the judicial system is designed to really hold people down even after they've paid their price to society. Peter paid his price to society, other guys have, and they deserve to have success. And anytime I can help those guys and support them, I do, as long as they're doing it the right way and obviously staying within the law. And Peter's one of those guys, and I like it. I mean, I just appreciate what he's done.
Yeah, he speaks very highly of you and what you've done, who you've been for him, and just kind of, like you said, the path. Because he said, hey, look, the system isn't really set up for guys like me to be successful after prison. And that's why he kind of went on his path, and you stood out to him. But I just think it's so crazy where you can go in your life. You know, here you are, like he said, it was the craziest thing. I'm in prison, and then I think it was like 2 or 3 years after, he's at lunch with you, you know, the sheriff, and it's just like, that's what people can do if they want to turn their lives around, if they have goals and they set their sights high and want to achieve those things. And so It's cool that you're willing to give those people chances, because you know, you get to see everyone on their worst day, on their best day. And you know, one of the questions that Lexi, I think it asked Peter, was that, like, do you believe, or no, it was Jamie Gissel. He's on SWAT. I don't know if you know the Gissel. You know,
I saw
Jamie?
that one too. I watched that.
You know, the question was, do you believe that people are inherently good or evil? And what do you think? Like, what's your answer to that question?
I think people are inherently good.
Okay.
But I think there are people that are easily inclined to be bad as well. And that's the challenge in life. We all have our weaknesses. And the question is, are you going to be able to manage your weaknesses and overcome them? Your weakness may be something different. Their weakness may be a propensity to not follow the rules or law. Some of those people, though, can be some of the most successful people. And it's just a matter of the one wrong decision in life puts them on the other path. But I think people are born good because we're all children of God.
Yeah.
But I think that people we all have our internal struggles, and some people struggle to manage that.
Is there anything that you see, like, pretty consistent with the people that you are arresting? Is it you know, maybe they didn't have a father figure or mother figure, or just like lack of attention? Maybe both parents are working. Like, what's that one constant where it's like, yep, yeah, I know.
It's not foolproof, but the reality is broken homes or single parent homes, because I don't think those two are the same thing.
What do you mean when you say broken?
Broken home could be like their parents were drug addicts, they were abusive, whatever. Okay. Then you have single parent homes where the parents out trying to make a living and support children.
Which was Peter's case.
There is a consistency where the father is not in the home. That is a recipe. It makes it much more challenging for people to have success, or at least to avoid the law stuff. So I would say that's one of the things that we've seen. But yeah, it is. When you can keep the family unit together, your chances of success are great. Now look, I have 5 kids. We raised our kids religious. My wife and I have never drank. We don't smoke. We don't do any of that. Yet I had one of my sons go down the wrong road and get into drugs.
Yeah.
Actually got into fentanyl even. He ends up hitting a guy on a bike one day. We weren't letting him drive our cars. He took one of our cars off and ended up hitting a guy on a bike. And thank goodness he didn't kill the guy.
Yeah.
But he got charged with ag assault with a deadly weapon. And my son ended up 6 months in my jail. By this time, though,
you were the sheriff at the time.
I was the sheriff. Yeah, this was like in 2022.
Wow.
And you know, but we believe in if you there are consequences in life. You must take responsibility for your actions. And my son did. By that time, he had been clean for about 1.5 years. But unfortunately, he still had to go spend that time in jail.
How hard was that? Because I could assume that you could kind of show him preferred treatment in there, whatever preferred treatment means in the jail. But
you want to know what you did? You want to know how well you treat your inmates? Put your own son in jail and you'll find out. And luckily, we treat our inmates with respect. I showed no preferential treatment other than bringing in pizza 2 times, but I brought in pizza for everybody in his pod.
Yeah.
For me to bring my son a pizza, I brought in $200 worth of pizza for the employees and the inmates. I only did it a couple times, but I gave him no preferential treatment. He called me a few times crying, saying, "Dad, this," and I said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you."
Wow, man.
And so
that's got to be the hardest thing.
That was the second hardest thing. The hardest thing was walking away from him. That day he hit the guy on the bike, and I checked on him. Then I walked over and I checked on the guy, and I was praying the guy didn't die. Then I walked back over to my son, and I stood in front of him, and I looked him in his eye, and I just said, "I have to leave you here. If I stay here, they're going to say that I influenced this case in some way, and I can't afford, I won't do that to you or us. And so I have to leave you here." And I walked away and left him standing there with 8 cops standing around him, getting ready to process him. And I knew.
Well, you knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew exactly what
he was going to go through. And I think he was angry with us for a while, but ultimately it was what my son needed to bring him back around. Then he had a baby, and then he had his fiance, and he got out of jail on October 14th, and on December 16th we got a knock at the door. He was working. His fiance had picked him up from work. We were just getting ready for Christmas. My wife was wrapping presents. I was at home. Or I had been out at a dinner, and then I'd gone Christmas shopping. I came home, and 30 minutes later, we got a knock at the door, and it was Sheriff Penzone from Maricopa County, 2 of my chiefs, and 2 guys from Gilbert PD. And one of my chiefs has known my kids since they were little kids.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me, and he said, "Cooper and the baby are dead." And
jeez, man.
In the blink of an eye, I lost my 22-year-old son, lost my 11-month-old granddaughter, and a few days later, my daughter-in-law died. Guy was DUI, alcohol and drugs, and hit and killed him. And what it reminds you, though, is it's part of the reason I'm doing the Senate thing. I don't know that I would have done it, but because of that, you realize there is no guarantee for tomorrow, and the only thing we take with us in this life is what we do. And so my wife and I knew exactly what we needed to do at that moment, and so we've always been those people that if you feel compelled to do it, you should do it. I know you believe in the ready, fire, aim, which is funny because I was watching that today, and I actually was in the shower this morning thinking of Ready, Fire, Aim, the book. And then I watched one of your things and saw that. So I'm a big believer in the same thing.
How many years ago was that with your son?
So he got out in 2022 and died December of 2022. So a little over a year ago. We went through the year mark in December of this last year, and so
thanks for sharing that, man. Wow. I mean, what a time of your life, man.
It was look, that whole thing. I mean, we went through all of it. Yeah. We went through the troubles of what he was going through, and then we went through the loss. We expected the loss when he was on drugs, but we did not expect the loss when he was cleaned up. You just never know what life's going to throw at you. What you realize, too, is everybody has hard things they go through and challenges, and honestly, it's kind of designed to see if you're going to get back up and you're going to continue to push forward and you're going to stay on the course. And you know what? We're big believers in perseverance and determination.
Yeah.
And you can't, when you get knocked down, you got to get back up, and sometimes you got to bite down on your mouthpiece and just start throwing blows back, and that's what we do in our family, and we try to teach that to our other kids as well.
Dang, man, that's cool. And so that's kind of your drive now for pretty much.
That's been our drive, and you know, look, I'm a God-fearing guy, and there are things in life that you're supposed to do, and a lot of people are too afraid, or they say that the timing doesn't line up, and I tell people, timing and opportunity very rarely line up. It's like a snaking back and forth, and you never catch them when they line up. Typically, timing and opportunity are very far apart.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, the timing wasn't bad for us to do this Senate stuff, but we had other plans, and plans that would probably be more lucrative to my family or more, you know, kind of take me to another level. But we felt much like Jonah. Yeah. When the Lord said to Jonah, "I need you to go down and go to Nineveh. I don't want to end up in the belly of the fish, only to be vomited out and still have to go to Nineveh."
Right.
So I'm just going straight to Nineveh.
I'm just going straight there. Talk Talk to us about the border, man. You're passionate about the border.
Yeah.
What does that look like right now? What's your fight there? What are you pushing for?
Look, the border's a mess. This administration has completely screwed it up. It's always been a problem. I don't want people to think like, oh, he's only saying that. No, it's always been a problem.
Yeah.
But it's very different than what we've dealt with in the past. What we've dealt with in the past was predominantly people coming from Mexico. For decades, it's kind of been the same thing.
Yeah.
The cartels, for the most part, were making money off of drugs, not humans, but they had a little bit of money from there. Over the last 3 years, the cartels realized they could make a lot more money, or as much money, off of humans. And what it's made the cartels into, as opposed to small-time operations or medium-sized operations at the border, it has opened the door for them to run large-scale global opportunities, because the cash flow that they've brought in because of the people, they're coming from all over the world, and that's how it shifted. Now the people are predominantly from other countries, 170 different countries. They're coming. They are coming from Africa, from the Middle East, from Syria, from
and they'll just fly in there and then walk over.
Typically, they fly as far south as Brazil or Ecuador. It depends on which countries are allowing them to come in to their countries.
Okay.
Many of them are able to come right up to Mexico. But some of them are as far away as Ecuador or Brazil, and then they have to transport on trains and
what a journey
buses.
for them.
Oh, and I've talked to some of these families, and by the time they get across the border, they're just
months, right?
beat down. Yeah, some of them are months. Some of them get stuck. I ran into a couple Argentine guys, and I pulled them over on a traffic stop, and they were stuck in Mexico for 8 months, and they just were working there, and finally they were able to cross.
Wow.
And look, some of them are families, but what's really changed now, and why I say this is a real problem, is they're predominantly military-age men now, coming from all over the world, coming from places like China. And I think the greatest threat to us right now is at the southern border. Whether it's the terrorist threats that are coming from the people coming in, we're not able to vet them all properly.
Yeah.
Or whether it's, I think, is one of the main threats right now is fentanyl.
Yeah.
Fentanyl is, in my opinion, the new terrorism. They're killing more Americans now with fentanyl poisonings than any military force has ever killed in America. Or they've never been this successful. And they're using fentanyl. It's a quiet killer. There's no bombs going off. There's no planes crashing into buildings. There's no guns being fired. Yet they're killing more Americans now with fentanyl than they are with anything else. And so you can see from my own personal experience with my son, my passion, not to mention, we're the ones that have to clean up the mess from the consequences, what comes from an open border.
Right.
We're the ones that have to go to a person's house when their child has died from fentanyl poisoning, or when their family was killed from somebody running from police trying to avoid because they came in the country illegally. So there's a lot of things that come with it that we're pretty passionate about, trying to protect your family, my family, everything.
Do you know how your son got hooked on fentanyl?
Oh, he started off, I'm sure, with marijuana and just wrong friends. Honestly, we knew it. We could see it. He was hanging around with the wrong people.
Yeah.
My son was actually one of these really good spirits where he wanted to help people, and he was attracted to the strays.
Yeah.
And we kept telling him, you're not strong enough to help them yet. When the time comes, you can help them, but you're not strong enough to. You'll end up like them more than likely that you will be able to save them. And we weren't wrong. And he ended up actually falling to their level as opposed to raising him to his.
Yeah.
And he was my middle child, and he was always kind of a rambunctious, not a rambunctious kid, but he was always shady. He was kind of always doing little secretive things. And but he was our most tender-hearted kid.
Yeah.
And that tender heart is what kind of got him down the wrong path. Wrong friends.
Dang, man.
So know who your kids' friends are. That's for sure.
I feel like I'm a broken record, but every time I interview someone or talk on a panel or whatever, like they ask the biggest thing that made a difference in my life, and it was just my friends. And so I always say the quote, like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And it just seems like in every aspect of your life it's applicable, because if you're around people that are trying to push you to be a better person, whether that's financially or a father or whatever it might be physically, like you're gonna adapt and be like that person. And it's the same thing if they're trying to pull you down. it's not a matter if, it's just when. They will pull you down.
That's exactly right. And I'm like you. I'm the man I am, partly because I don't know, I've always just been a rule follower for the most part, but I've also had amazing friends growing up, and we all had the same value system, and we were all striving for the same thing. So
what's the coolest thing about being sheriff then? Because talking about friends, I mean, you get to meet, I'm sure, all kinds of different people. What's like been the good times?
Oh man, my favorite stuff is helping the kids. We do a youth redirection program where we take kids, instead of them going through this whole the legal process and going to the county attorney and going through the courts. I wanted to come up with something. So I said, went to the county attorney. I said, I'm just uncomfortable with charging these kids and having it being on their record forever.
Yeah.
I said, would you be open if I...
Like kids like 16, 17, they're doing dumb stuff.
I took them from 10 all the way up to 18.
Wow.
And I said, would you mind if I looked into something? And he's like, no, not at all. So I flew out to Watsonville, California. I went a few other places. I came back and I said, I know exactly what I want to do. I want to start something called the Sheriff's Youth Redirection Program.
Okay.
And what I did is I put 4 classes together. We do it every other week. And we do goal setting and planning, digital media, social media, sexting, the dangers of it, drugs and alcohol, and then we do a career night. And part of that was I found that the kids were not responsive to punitive measures. What they needed was for you to drag their greatness out of them, to open their eyes to what they were capable of. And what was happening is when kids would make mistakes, they thought they were a bad kid, so the next mistake was that much easier.
Yeah, and then they start to believe it.
Yeah, and everybody's telling them, you did a bad thing, you're bad, bad, bad.
Yeah.
And we wanted to break that. And 2, they saw the police as the enemy, and we were not.
Right.
And so we wanted to break those 2 things. And so what we did is we the police, we embraced them and said, you're great. You made a mistake just like I did, and like your parents did, and like everybody other adult in here. Yeah. And I said, you know what? I don't care why you're here. I don't care what you did. What I care about is I want you to see the greatness you have. And so we would make them do 8 hours of horse therapy, or 8 hours of community service, which was horse therapy. Okay. So we make them go shovel some crap, and then we'd let them deal with the horses. So things like I've had over 200 kids go through that program. And only about 5.
Once a week?
We do it every other week, yeah.
Wow.
We've been doing it since 2018, and it's been my pride and joy, one of my great accomplishments.
I cut you off. You said you've only had 5 what?
Reoffend.
Really?
Yeah. It's been really successful. I do it as a mentorship
2018.
program. Yeah.
Wow.
It's been a very successful program.
That's awesome.
The other thing I'm proud of is I hate government overreach. I hate government restrictions. You know, you've been in pest control business and all these things, and government is trying to choke the life out of everything.
Yep.
And they always want to reduce risk. I'm sorry, you cannot have freedom without risk. If you want to be able to become a gazillionaire, or if you want to do whatever you want to do, it comes with risk.
Yep.
And you can soar to the moon, or you can crash into the ground.
Right.
That's what freedom is.
Right.
And government wants to restrict. They want to put you in styrofoam. They want to coddle you, and I'm not okay with that. And one thing is the sheriff is, my job is to protect you from the bad guy and to protect you from government overreach. And so what I do as a sheriff is my ability to say to the government, no, we're not going to do that. Like when the COVID came around. I said, no, we're not doing
on COVID.
We're not doing the lockdowns.
Yeah.
We're not doing the mask mandates. We're not doing the vaccine mandates. And, you know, I took a lot of heat for it, but for me it was easy because the line between good and bad and right and wrong was very distinct in the sand. And so I would say those are really some of the things that I've really enjoyed being able to do as a sheriff.
I love it, man. Well, kind of in closing here, I mean, I think one of my greatest joys about doing this podcast, and I didn't know it until about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but my little boy is 10 years old, and he listens to every single podcast I do. So for my little boy that's listening, like, what advice would you give him right now? He's 10 years old, 4th grade.
I would say these 3 things. Number 1, and I tell our kids this, number 1 is be authentic. Be who you were meant to be. Every one of us have different fingerprints, different DNA. We have different irises, which is your most unique part about you. There is not a single person in this world that is like you. If that doesn't tell you of the godliness or the majesticness of your purpose here on earth, and the fact that you woke up this morning tells me and tells you, should tell you, that your work here in this earth is not done. And so, and the only way to do that is to embrace your authenticity, to understand the greatness you have within you, and you can only achieve that by recognizing your authenticity, embracing it, and getting out and sharing it with the world. So, number one is be authentic. Number two, don't be afraid to do the uncomfortable work. This guy sitting here right next to me, I know you've gone through some uncomfortable work to get to your businesses to where they're at, to take it, and you've been willing to do that uncomfortable work. Most people don't want to do it. I love like Gold Rush. You go in and they dig them, they fill this huge warehouse full of dirt, you know, and they process it, and they get all the big rocks out of it. Then they get the smaller rocks out of it. And finally, they get down to these buckets of what looks like sludge. Yeah. And then you process it some more. Right. And then at the very end, out of all those, you'll have a handful of gold out of a gymnasium size of dirt. Yeah. And some people might say that's not worth it. It's not worth the effort. But that gold is so valuable that it's worth every bit of it. The beauty about hard work is it weeds out all the lazy people. And it makes it easier for guys who are willing to put in the work to actually have success. And so don't be afraid to do the uncomfortable work. All the good stuff in life is behind the uncomfortable work. And the last thing is probably the most important thing is surrender the outcome. You know, when I lost my kids, I've always taught people that the most unhappiness, most frustration and anger and disappointment in life comes from you trying to control an outcome that you have no control over. Dang. The only thing you can control is your attitude and your work output. Everything else is outside of your control. I put on a gun and a badge every day. I go out, I stop people who drive under the influence of alcohol. There was nothing I could do to stop that kid from hitting my children that night. Yeah. And so here I am sitting here. I'm don't even want to get out of bed. And I remembered the things that I teach these kids of you have to surrender the outcome. What life is going to give you is going to give for you. And the only way you're going to get it and realize it is by surrendering the outcome. And so that's the most important thing. If you can surrender the outcome, you'll find that depression goes out the window, anger, anxiety, and all the things that hold you back in life will go out the window, and you'll start to see the goodness and the greatness that God or the universe or whatever you believe in is trying to bring out of you. And so be authentic. Don't be afraid to do the uncomfortable work and surrender the outcome. And as far as the Patriot stuff, remember, this is the greatest country in the world. Yeah. That's why 250,000 people every month are trying to come to this country, because it is the greatest country in the world. And this is the Alamo of freedom. And if we don't stand up and defend freedom here and now, then we won't have anywhere to go find it. We won't be flying in helicopters talking about this kind of stuff. Yeah. And so you must embrace that this is the greatest country in the world. And if you're mad at whatever, you don't like part of it, then do something about it. But this country is redeemable. It's worth fighting for. And my family and I are determined to do that. So
I appreciate you, man. And I needed to hear that, your third one today, because I doubled down on my business, and I'm so fixated on doubling it over the next 3 to 5 years that like I'm not having that much fun in the journey right now. And it's been stressful, and it's been hard, and it's been, all the things that you talked about. So, I mean, I just need to be okay with what it is and
surrender the outcome.
Yeah. And especially, I can't imagine. You're having to live your own words with losing a son. I can't imagine that pain. And so again, I appreciate you sharing that, and for all your service. I know you're sacrificing a lot to do what you're doing, man. So I appreciate it, bro.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And good luck to you. Everything will work out for you.
Yeah, I know.
Because the universe rewards those who will take the risk too. Yeah. So the fact that you're taking the risk, and I know it's uncomfortable, and there's a lot of people that are benefiting from your willingness to take the risk, and the people that are willing to. There's a lot of people that pay their bills because of what you do. So
yeah, and that's been fun, and that's what I tell my little boy Banks and my little girl Ivory. I just say, hey, look, discipline is the key, and consistency. Those are the two things you need to have, and everything will work out. So I understand the hours that it takes for a business. I mean, what you're doing with being the sheriff and now running for a Senate, like that's a 24/7 responsibility. Like, how does that put a toll on your kids and more importantly, your wife?
You know, I've always, I think what defines me and I've been able to have success is because I'm willing to do the grind.
Yeah.
I'll get in and grind it out. This is the hardest grind I've done. And I'm
the Senate, running for the Senate.
Yeah, and what's hard about it is I'm a businessman. And I feel like if I'm going to grind this hard, I should be benefiting financially. And I'm not. Like, I'm actually trying to get a job that'll probably pay less than what I would make in the private sector. And so, but what it does is it's cut off a lot of my income that I used to make doing speaking events. And it is really taking a lot of our time. I don't see my kids and my grandkids very often. My wife and I have put our reputation on the line. You put everything that you have, you're sliding into the center of the table. And you're out there trying to tell people, I'm not a politician, so I'm not going to try to tell you what you want to hear to get your vote. I'm going to tell you what I believe in, and then you decide if you want to vote for me.
I love it.
And that is tough. And my wife and I, we went on a cruise at the end of this last year. We snuck away. We're like, should we be doing this? Is this responsible? So we went on a cruise to the Hawaiian Islands.
Nice.
Right after Christmas, over New Year's this last year.
Okay.
And we kind of came back, and this is going to sound bad, but hopefully people understand why we're saying it. We looked at each other and we're like, you know what our mantra is going to be for this year? Who cares?
Who cares?
And I will tell you that it's been the most freeing thing.
Really?
Like when I'm stressing about like what to post or what should I do here, what should I say? And my wife and I will just look at each other and say, you know what I say? And we'll look at each other and go, who cares?
Dang.
We just do. We do what we think we need to do, and if it's meant to be, it'll be. And if it's not, it's not. It kind of goes back to the surrender the outcome, you know. And so, we have really just focused on just trying to be in the moment and not stress too much about it. Do the best we can and send it. Just go. Ready, fire, aim. And that has been very freeing for us this year. And now we're in a place where we're okay with the outcome. Now, whatever it is, whether we win or whether we lose, to us, we win either way. And I'm proud to say that I got in the arena and I slugged it out and I wasn't afraid. I picked up my sword and I walked into the arena and I battled it out. And so for us, that has been worth all the sacrifice that the family. And again, we're looking at it like, what if the founding fathers sacrificed to give us the freedoms that we have so that we can come out and sleep at night and not worry, and we can go make money and we can do all these things that we do, is because other people sacrificed. And who am I to say I'm not willing to sacrifice for that same thing? Whether I get to benefit from it or future generations do, I'm willing to do that sacrifice. So even though it's a hell of a lot of work, it's the most grind I've ever had to do. It is a stressful and a life-consuming thing. We're in for it, and we've just decided to do it.
So when you decided to do it, was your wife, because your wife is very active with the campaign, and like, were you like, hey, I need you, or was you like, hey, I'm with you, like, even if you told me you didn't want me, I'm coming with you?
She was with me no matter what.
Yeah.
And she also understands politics to know that this is a two-part thing. There's two of us. It takes two of us to do this.
Okay.
And we're both doing it.
Because that's what I talk a lot about as an entrepreneur, is a lot of people don't have that conversation with their wife. And so then they grow apart from their wife. And, you know, it ultimately leads to divorce. And that's one of the saddest things about entrepreneurship. And so I was just curious, you know, when you go to and do something like this, you know, what's that conversation like with your wife? Because you can't not have that conversation.
This was my wife's as much of her decision as it was mine. And we both just said we felt very compelled to do it, like I told you. And once we knew that we felt compelled to do it, there's no other choice but to do it. And we knew that her being in this race was an integral part of it. And so this is something we both feel like we, in our own way, have called to do it. And when I talk in front of people, I don't realize it, but later on they say, I love that you say we, like we did this and we're doing this.
I mean, that probably makes her feel so good.
I think it does. Well, but every night we come home, we're just so exhausted from
well, I'll
dealing with people.
Because I've made that mistake. It's like my wife, his name is Alyssa. She's like, hey, by the way, it's like it's we. You know, it's like I'm sorry, like because if I didn't have my wife, there's no way I could do what I do. You know?
Need a strong woman. Every entrepreneur and most good politicians are going to need a strong woman behind them. I mean, not a Hillary Clinton type, you know. But.
So we're in the middle of nowhere right now, right? Coming up on Sycamore Creek. I saw you peek over and look at the one car that's out there. Like, what goes through your mind as sheriff? Is he cooking meth? Is he doing drugs?
Yeah, that one truck out there looks like, so we get them in the south of the desert. It looks like a load vehicle, or it looks like an abandoned
What's a load vehicle?
Like a human load vehicle or a drug load vehicle.
Jeez, man. Is that literally what threw in through your mind here?
Yeah, that's what I thought that was.
So funny.
Not the Jeep, not the truck. The truck. The white truck over there.
Talk to me about, like, the craziest drug bust or craziest crime scene you've been on.
You know, a lot. There's another one right there.
There's another one right there.
They're actually, I don't know what they're doing. Oh, they're just chilling. You know, a lot
this
of the
car's abandoned, man.
Yeah, this one's abandoned. This is, like I told you, it looks like an old load vehicle.
Jeez.
So, a lot of it we try to forget because you really do see some awful things. They say the average police officer experiences 400 to 700 traumatic experiences in their career.
Wow.
Where the average citizen only experiences 2 to 4. So that gives you an idea of what cops do on a daily basis and what impact it has on our lives and our careers.
Right.
And a lot of the stuff we condition ourselves to just forget.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I've watched people die in front of me. I've watched people be killed. I've watched people, I've saved people. I have busted drugs. I've been in pursuits. I've shown up to houses where there's, blood everywhere and people dead. For me, I was a gang and drug detective for a long time. And so for me, the biggest thrill was, chasing down guys that were doing drive-by shootings on houses and tackling them in a yard.
That's just gang wars, just people just driving by and want to shoot up a house that's having a party.
And all of those things, those are what I like the most. It's, but I've had some really, where you feel almost guided to a place where you saved somebody that would have died most certainly if you would not have shown up. Or you were able to save a small child when they're dying. These are the things that I try to focus on as opposed to the bad ones where, you see the worst of human nature.
Yeah.
And there's some really bad humans out there. There's some real monsters. And I love the idea that we can find those monsters and keep them safe, get them in our jail and our prisons and keep them away from the regular people.
Yeah.
All right, I don't know how to phrase this exactly, but like corruption takes a lot of shapes. Has anyone ever tried to test your integrity for their own motives?
Lexi just asked a great question. We'll leave you in there. She asked about corruption. Yeah, look, corruption exists, and now running for Senate, what you realize is that money and power play such a major role. And really, you got power and money that is trying to dictate who gets to be in power in our states and in our country. As far as people actually bribing me, you get the low-level stuff, like you'll get some girl in the back of a car trying to talk her way out, offering things to get out of a thing. I've never had anybody offer me money. I've never had the cartels come. And I think they can tell who might be susceptible to that as opposed to, I think that I can tell you when you meet somebody if that person is probably somebody that might be corruptible or whether they're a strong person. And I've just never been approached by that. Now, have I had people try to talk me out of the Senate race? Yeah, lots of times. Probably 7 to 10 times.
Really?
But when you know what you're supposed to do, it makes it easy to just say, no, I'm not interested in that. I think that's what makes me a good candidate for this. I'm not out looking for endorsements. I don't have all the big money behind me, and I don't want it. because I want to represent the people. I don't want to be beholden to anybody, and I think I take pride in the fact that I'm not beholden to anybody.
Yeah. Dang, man, that's what a race you're on right now.
Oh, man.
What a life, bro.
It is a crazy life, but you know what? You only get one, so you may as well give it hell. Like I always say, I didn't get dressed up for nothing.
I didn't get dressed up for nothing. I love it. All right, well, we'll head back. I know you're pressed on time.
We're coming right back up the Fountain Hills.
Yep. I think like the child abuse and the sex trafficking would probably be the hardest thing for me if I was in your shoes.
We did a thing where we put out we're like a 14-year-old girl. We pretended to be a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And we put out like, I'm bored. And we had 60 men respond in 1 hour.
That's just so foul.
It is honestly, if I had the staffing, I could be arresting child predators every day. Gosh. It is sickening. It's disgusting. It's the worst thing. I mean, what people do to children is absolutely
so
deplorable. There's a special place in hell for a lot of these people.
You're the man, bro. I appreciate you coming on today.
This was
nice
awesome.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you, and thanks for letting me come. And this was amazing today. If you haven't had a chance, you're going to have to try to get on his podcast. Do something great.
You're going to have to
get
do
on
something
the podcast.
great.
Because flying over the river, I mean, I've flown this many times, not many times. I've flown this a few times. What you flew me today was beautiful. This is a beautiful state.
We're lucky to live here and everything.
I'm looking forward to being the senator of this state.
Let's go. Thanks, man.
Hey, thank you.